Started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Human Connection podcast, where I have the fun and the pleasure of having polyvagal informed conversation with anyone who would really talk to me about it. And to me, I have Mel Pohl, MD. Mel is a physician. He's the senior medical consultant to the pain recovery program at the Pointe Malibu Recovery Center. And we want to talk today about chronic pain from a polyvagal lens, looking at. Mel, I am so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Me as well. It's great to see you again, and can hardly wait to hear what I'm going to say.
Yes, I remember, we met, I don't know, it was a few weeks ago, end of August in the Oxford series, in the master series in Oxford, and you were part of the panel on chronic pain. And that was like, I heard a lot of things and I was like, yes, this is so valuable. And of course, I forgot everything that you've said, so I'm excited to hear it again. So maybe it's thick this time. So, Mel, and chronic pain for, if I remember correctly, it's a constant pain, then it's over 6 months. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's what, defines chronic pain.
Yeah, it's between 3 and 6 months. Okay. It's actually leaning more towards 3 months in the formal definition, but it really means pain that hasn't gone away and is not going away. Long-term, unremitting, persistent.
Which is many times in the cases of many people I know, medically, there's nothing wrong medically. There's no intervention that would kind of take it away other than managing it. So is that correct?
Yes. I'm one of the perspectives that I bring to the idea of chronic pain is that it is not in the body. I say tongue in cheek, the tissue is not the issue. The issue is how the brain processes. And in the medical equation, that becomes less medical. But in my estimation, it's just as real and just as scientifically proven and just as cellularly organized. And it's open to interventions, but it's not going after the abnormality in the back or in the spine with surgery or in the shoulder. It's really about adjusting attitude, approach, perception, which is really the cause of suffering.
Yeah, and that's why I said it's medically, because for many times it's like the back hurts, but there's nothing wrong with the back, so it must be something. So let's just numb the pain. So if we want to look at it from a polyvagal, which is nervous system lens, what is going on with this pain that wouldn't go away?
Yeah. So I mean, from a polyvagal standpoint, we know that the vagus nerve is responsible for creating safety in the organism, in the being, and it has different ways. One is to curl up in a ball and play dead. Another is to get activated and agitated and fight or flight, run away. And the more sophisticated human way is to do what we call ventral vagal, which is co-regulate with another human using from the neck up, in essence, the hearing and visual cues and sound, voice recognition, and the smiles on our faces all create a sense of safety. Now, why is that important with chronic pain? Because chronic pain is, as with many other illnesses, diseases, is the profound distortion of sense of safety. So for people with chronic pain, the signal has come through, and there's a variety of avenues that bring the signal, whether it's trauma as a child or an injury or an accident or trauma as an adult or all of the above. Typically, it's sequential traumas, but in essence, the brain, the nervous system has interpreted a stimulus as dangerous, and the world is dangerous, and that danger signal does all sorts of things that are dysfunctional, if you will, that cause inflammation and cause activation of certain cells that cause this painful sensation. And in essence, it really impairs the ability of the individual to function normally.
So it's, let me see if I understand this correctly. So the chronic pain is a cue of threat to the
Yes.
body, and it comes
Yes.
from the lack of safety.
Yes, and the analogies, we use a lot of analogies because when I present this to a patient, their initial response is, "Are you telling me the pain is in my head?" And I got that response from a patient who had headaches, and I said, "Well, yeah, your pain is in your head. Where else is it?" But the implication is that in some way it's not medical, it's not real, it's not valid, and that source of disconnection from the experience in my body from what other people see and tell me is extremely threatening. So, somebody like this with a headache, chronic headache syndrome, or low back syndrome, or fibromyalgia, which is unexplained diffuse pain all over the body, goes into a medical provider and they're told that it's in their head, it's psychosomatic, they're overreacting. And the net effect is, of course, more threat, more unsafety. So it's a cyclical kind of event.
It's quite, I've heard this many times, but now as you say it, it's quite almost an absurd way of saying that if the medical, or if the organ doesn't show anything and the person is feeling pain, then they're imagining it or it's not real. But for the person, it is real, no matter what it is. But
Yes.
because we don't see it as physicians. So how do you go about with getting that healed or that recovery from the chronic pain?
Sure.
Because it's always, it's symptomatic. Treat the symptoms, numb the pain.
Yes.
we don't
Yeah.
we don't feel the pain, but if the chemical that's been used
Sure.
that
Sure.
would that takes our sensation of the pain away, if it's not there, the pain is there, so it's just covering it up. It's not really treatment.
Yes. A lot of parts of that question or to unpack.
Yeah.
I want to go back to one specific issue, which is physical pain and emotional pain live in the same place in the brain.
Mhm.
So we can't differentiate in fact, there's an actual experiment where they did functional MRI scans of people's brains. So this is a brain when in pain, and they burned them with a heat probe. So they've actually burned their skin, and the response of the brain was in particular areas in the middle part of the brain. They then took a group of people who had broken up with a lover, so they had heartbreak,
Okay.
and they showed them a picture of their former lover, and this exact same place in the brain lit up.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's just one of many, many, many kinds of pieces of data that show that when I am hurt, when I am afraid, when I am angry, when I am frustrated, when I'm depressed, when I'm guilty, my brain is activated. And if I have a physical pain syndrome, my pain will either come up or it'll get worse. So it's really important to understand that for us and for the patient, the client, because if they don't understand that, then they're looking to the doctor to treat the pain with some tissue procedure. People with back pain are best example. They get injection in their spines and they burn the nerves, and then they go in for a surgical procedure, which is less than 20% of time, this is a back surgery helpful for chronic back pain.
Yeah.
Less than 20%. So, you know, the term barking up the wrong tree
Yeah.
is really. Now, the other thing that's done, you refer to is chemicals. So certainly in the States, the standard has been you come in with pain, I give you a prescription, and the prescription will get stronger and stronger over the course of time because the body, the numbing effect is transient.
Mm.
So, and actually, the body creates more pain when it's being dampened down by an opioid medication, narcotic medication. So that's not a great solution for
Yeah.
people with chronic
And I
pain.
think it's a solution that has been, it's not just in the States. It's
Yeah,
let's deal with the symptoms, let's just numb the
yeah,
pain and go on with
yeah.
life. So unfortunately, that's the case. Yeah.
And interestingly enough, opioids, narcotics treat emotional pain very effectively,
Mm.
temporarily. So when I take my Lortab or Norco or hydrocodone is the generic name, is probably how you might know it, or oxycodone or morphine, it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
It relieves all the the noise in my head, if you will, that contributes to the signaling of the pain stimulus. And but the downside of it is, of course, that it backfires. It doesn't last. It wears off. I become dependent, intolerant, and then it actually causes inflammation in the system. So that's part of the setup of the problem. So what can we do? We begin, I mean, I work at a treatment program where, and we are polyvagally certified, by the way. We're going to be the first treatment program in the United States that's officially certified by the Polyvagal Institute. Yay!
Hey.
We're very excited. In any case, we start with a sense of safety. So from the moment someone comes to the facility, it's a beautiful place. It's very comfortable, and our staff is really trained in the idea of neuroception, which is really sort of being sensitive to the signals coming from the body. And the start of polyvagal training for us was to look at our own bodies. So our exercises were what happens to me when I talk to you. And if you're a patient in pain, you know, what happens to my brain and my nervous system, and how can I co-regulate, whether it's with you or with some other staff people, so that I can be present and really ventrally vagally present and stimulate your sense of safety. And the cool part is that people resonate with that because it's true. You know, it's
100%.
fundamental. Yeah.
And what blows me away about, you know, the polyvagal theory and the realization is that, and I think Dr. Porges have said that, I think he said that, but it's like we're really emotional beings. We respond to the tonality of the voice, to the facial expression. However, for a lot of people, we don't want to admit that. We would
Well,
we want
we
to find
don't see it.
reason. We don't
Yes.
we don't see it. And but even if we subconsciously see it, but we don't want
Yeah.
to admit that that's the cause of us feeling uncomfortable, or
Yeah.
but we think we're logical and very
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's interesting is this is part of the work. You say, how do we impact a person and their nervous system? Well, the very first stage is to educate them on what's true. The truth is this is real pain and it lives in your brain, not in your body. So, and sometimes it's a compromise to, well, of course you have, you know, a knee joint that has arthritis. There's some signaling coming from that, but there's just as many knee joints that don't have arthritis that signal pain. So it's not just that. And as you begin to understand the kind of science that you and I have just been dabbling in right now, the next step is to gather data to support the information. So with a curious eye, what, you know, is your pain always in the same place? I don't know. It moves around. Well, why is that? Well, because I move wrong, or sometimes it goes from the left side to the right side. Well, how could that be? There's nothing wrong on the left side. Oh, that's really true. And it's a very gentle opening process, awareness process of what's so in the body, and just we call it Sherlock Holmes. Use a like a magnifying glass to see what's really going on. And the most important way to do that is with no judgment, because people really want it to be physical. They really don't feel comfortable with that belief system. So it's a process, of course, that opens doors, and it's very exciting to have somebody see it in present, or in a group setting, and say, I was surfing and I didn't have any pain yesterday. It's like, where'd it go?
Like, yeah,
What was
it's
different? Well,
that
yeah.
it's I think one really important thing here is, I think, not I think it's the validation of the
Hmm.
existence of pain, which I think with chronic pain, and I think of also neurodivergence of sometime when it's something it's happening inside me, inside the client or
Yeah.
patient, and
Yeah.
takes a lot to have put a lot of effort to convince the professional that it's true and it's not imaginary. So I think that's validation, is like, oh, you see
Yeah.
me, you
Yeah.
believe
Yeah.
me. I think that is
Yeah.
unfortunately missing a lot from the general. I'm sure there are exceptions who to doctor and physicians who would acknowledge the pain and give their patients the time, but it's not the general rule.
It
And
is
just
not.
when you mentioned surfing, I was looking at the center, and I found surfing therapists, and I was like, oh wow, this is
Come
only
on.
in
It's
Malibu.
so Malibu. I know. So today is surf day, but just so you know, it's not just surfing. They start out with a meditation and process to prepare for what's happening, because it's the water, it's the sand, it's the open air, it's waves. So a lot of people have a connection in sometimes positive, sometimes not so positive ways, and then they enter into the water, and with a surfboard or with a boogie board, or neither. And some people are hopping up and surfing, and other people are holding on to the board for dear life. But the really cool part is at the end of it, they do a DBT, dialectical behavioral training exercise, in debriefing about what came up in terms of distress, in terms of polyvagal responses, and ground in the process. So it's a several hour process, and it really is very powerful.
It's amazing. So going back to chronic pain.
Yes.
So
Yes.
with that, with an increased sense of safety, and
Hmm.
how does that changes the physiology of the body and the pain perception in the brain? How,
Yeah. So
yeah,
great
the
question. And
magical thing,
it's
I call it.
yeah, well, it is the magic, because it's really um if you picture the chronic pain syndrome with the volume knob turned up inside the central nervous system,
Hmm.
the the things that we do to create safety and stimulate ventral vagal turn the volume down. So we use it at our center. We use SSP, which is Safe and Sound Protocol, created by Dr. Porges, and it's an auditory program, comes through earphones, and it's just what the patient hears is music, but the music is infused with tones that are stimulating the ventral vagus. So people do that every day. They're trained on that with our pain psychologist, Les Aria, and they simply, it's not a conscious shift. It's a nervous system shift that's done by vagal stimulation. And we'd love to be able to scientifically measure the effect of that, because Dr. Porges said, so what happens, do you think? It's very difficult, because we're doing 20 things. That's one of 20 things that we do to people when they come in the door. So and all of the interventions that we do are related to finding safety. So we do a lot of breath work. Um, there are certain rhythmic breathing exercises, 4-7-8, which is 4 in, hold 7, 8 out, is a stimulator of ventral vagus as well. We do a lot of meditative practices. We have a director of holistic services who was actually in, I think you might have met her. She was with me when we were in Oxford. But anyway, Ashley is this gifted, blessed being, who does sound baths with our folks and does yoga instruction and qigong. And so there's a lot of time to train the brain to create new pathways that stimulate safety.
Yeah.
Um,
I have a
and
question, just to bring it also, because someone would say, okay, if it's in the brain, if the pain
yeah,
is in the brain, why is there's part of the body that the pain shows up there all the time, like neck, shoulders,
yeah.
back, lower back. Why is it somewhere else? Why is it in the same place?
Yeah.
If it's just in the brain receptors.
So there's a number of explanations, but let's say, for example, I just had a conversation with a friend who we did some work together, and she had surgery on her hand for arthritis. And we saw each other at a conference, and I said, "How you doing?" And she's like, "I'm miserable. I'm in pain all the time. It's way worse than it was before the surgery. I don't know what to do about it." And she was just at 4 months. So, it was becoming chronic. And we had some conversations about safety, and we did a process called somatic tracking. And somatic tracking is just a way of noticing what's going on. And the fact is that she had surgery. So her brain interpreted that the surgery was meaningful and that it caused changes in her hand that were causing her to feel pain. When in actual fact, as we did some exploring, yes, of course she had surgery and it wasn't a normal hand, but the pain lodged in this abnormal tissue from, I mean, she was assaulted with a knife in
Yeah.
surgery.
Yes.
And she came out, you
Surgery
know,
is a trauma to the body, and it's a huge
exactly,
threat risk,
exactly.
a cue of threat. Yeah.
And she was it was unexpected. She had no idea this was going to happen. So it was shocking and extraordinarily unsafe. And in the middle of all this, she was working very hard, traveling here and there, pressed to do In fact, we tried to schedule some time to do a Zoom, and she didn't have the time to do it. I said, well, so that should really tell you something about, how can your nervous system settle down and heal
Yeah.
in the throes of being, running and challenged all the time, because the sympathetics are activated. So long and the short of it is there was something in the tissue. So we don't deny that there's tissue, but it's the way the brain interprets the analogy. I don't think I actually said this out loud, but it's like I threw you a ball and your brain thought it was a hand grenade. So instead of it's just a ball, your
Yeah.
brain says, no, no, what's happening in my thumb and my hand is I'm going to be crippled, and it's going to go on forever and I can't sleep. And, I made a mistake, and all those emotional things are driving the pain level up. And I just met with her recently, and she said, one conversation that we had enabled her to really shift her perspective. She's very insightful, therapy savvy person, just enabled her to shift her perspective and say, it's simply a strong experience in my hand. And it's not, there's nothing really wrong. It's healing. It's taking longer than I'd like, but and her pain experience has changed substantially. So it's not that I don't feel the pain, it's that the pain isn't as significant as it was before.
Yeah. I think while you were talking, the thought that was coming in my head is like the materialistic world that we live in, of seeing the body as a thing, and it's a piece of meat. You cut it and you do things, and things should work a certain way. And there's the link between, or the wires between the brain and that organ, that
Mm-hmm.
part of the body is sensing, no, this is an emergency.
That's
And
right.
on
That's
top
right.
of it, the speed of life that we want to live in is like, I needed to heal, and I needed to heal right now.
Oh, yes. Impatience is a big
and
challenge.
and the body needs time. It's much slower, but
Yeah,
it does amazing things. So,
it does.
well, so is it simplistic to say that, you know, cues of safety, environment of safety will lead to recovery? Of course, there needs to be stimulate kind of interventions along the way to increase that sense of safety. But is it
Hmm.
the core ingredient in recovery, that
I
sense
believe
of
it is.
safety?
Yeah. I mean, you fed me that question, so I'll answer it as yes. I mean, to watch somebody who suffers so much get what we're talking about and internalize it and then experience it is phenomenal. So, and typically if somebody suffered from a situation and has trained their brain over the course of a decade, it's not going to, you know, reverse itself 100% and stay 100% reversed.
Yeah.
So it's not uncommon to see people. Sometimes I'll get a call from a patient and he or she'll say, "Oh my God, I had a flare up of pain." And we actually call the term for that in the field is it's called an extinction burst. And it's basically you picture that brain that thinks, the brain has misinterpreted. The brain believes I need the pain to tell me something. And
Mm.
that's not the truth. You know, I need pain. If I break my leg, I need pain to tell me my leg is broken so I don't walk on it. If I have low back pain from a bulging disc, I don't need it. I mean, I have the low back pain. And as we talk and I get engaged, I have no pain. And when I bring it up, I'm more aware of the pain.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go to the gym and lift weights later, and I can walk miles, and I can hike, I can climb. I mean, but my pain, my brain sort of, if I allow it, if I don't do my work, it becomes, it's like a magnet. We say it's kind of like crack cocaine. It's like my brain wants to say, no, there's something wrong on my back and I should lie down. And when in fact, that's the worst thing for me. I need to get up and move. So, yeah, the brain, the brain is really interesting, and it is trying to serve the function. So, from a polyvagal standpoint, the brain feels like it's under threat. It's not, but it feels like it, and it responds as if there's a threat. So, and depending on my level of evolution and my level of practice, I'll either curl up in a ball. And we have a young man with chronic fatigue syndrome, and that's what he does. He goes to bed and spends at home. He was in bed 22 hours out of the day, couldn't get up. And in treatment, you got to go. There's breakfast in the morning, and there's yoga, and there's groups, and there's you know outings and beach walks and surf on Fridays. He can't stay in his room. And as he begins to mobilize his body
Mm.
and find out that it's still safe, you know, uh, and for him, his sympathetics were also very activated. But he's doing a lot of ventral work right now,
Yeah.
and it's against the grain. His grain is, I want to go lie down, and I say, yeah, I know you want to go lie down, but get up.
Yeah, because that's again where the body felt safe at some point
That's
in
right.
life.
That's
And
right.
I want to come back to, what is pain? If you want to define what the functionality of pain. You said, you break a leg, there is
Yes.
pain. The body is telling you,
Yes.
hey, you need more attention. So, what is the functionality of pain? Why the nervous system and the brain creates
Yeah.
the nervous system creates pain?
Yeah. We have to break the question up, because if we talk about acute pain, which
Mhm.
is time limited, tissue related signal that says something's wrong, protect it.
Mhm.
That's what pain is really about. That's what God gave us pain for. But chronic pain is not that. Chronic pain is long term. It's not related to the tissue. It's related to the brain's interpretation of what's happened to the tissue. And it's not functional. So the example that I gave with my back is not, it's not a helpful, useful signal. It's just a pain in my back. It's just annoying. It's frustrating. It's, irritating and depressing. And oftentimes, one of the worst things that happens to people who have that pain signal is they withdraw. And of course, as from a polyvagal lens, they don't co-regulate. They're all alone with their own endangered nervous system, misinterpreted endangered nervous system, which feeds on itself. So it's really, the isolation is a huge part of the processing the worsening of chronic pain syndrome. And one of the things that we see is that if it's hard to have self-esteem, and I feel so bad about myself and nobody wants to be around me. And, sometimes that's true. Who wants to be around somebody who's complaining all the time? But all of that falls into a different category than that functional pain that you asked about.
Yeah, the functional brain there, it's timed. It's like any of our responses, the sympathetic or the dorsal, it comes for a reason and it goes back. But
yes.
So you mentioned, the back. So for someone who has back issues or back chronic pain and would go, let's say, for a run, and the body, it feels like, oh, this is threat, this is experience pain. The most people would say, okay, I need to stop doing what I'm doing.
Yes.
Because otherwise it would get worse.
Yeah. So a couple of points there. One is that oftentimes people have done something, it's had a response, and they say, oh, if I do this, that's going to happen, so I can't do this. So it's fear avoidance, which goes back to the sympathetics. In actual fact, what I offer somebody is an opportunity to try it again, because maybe the circumstances where you were running on an uneven surface and you ran a particular way or had a particular night's sleep, today's a different day. And what we're going to do is we're not going to run, we're going to walk. And if you feel well enough, then we're going to fast walk. And if you feel even well, we're not going to run, we're going to fast walk further. And so it's, the expression of baby steps. It's really reintroducing activities to the nervous system that have been abandoned, and then responding to cues in the body, which, if it's, let's say it hurts, it's aching. Okay, so what happens when you stop, and then you start walking again? Well, it doesn't hurt anymore. So again, that Sherlock Holmes data gathering, what can I do? And the real key here is, like in yoga, we work with the edge, right? We get to the edge and then we pull back because it hurts. And then we don't stop. We just re-engage the edge, and that over time, the edge expands. And that's really how the consciousness is. And that's really how the vagal nervous system, if we let the vagal break off just a little bit, and we feel that energy, that, we have to reinterpret what those signals are really about, because that's not a bad thing. That's a really good thing.
Yeah, it sounds like, the body is sensing that whatever the state of threat is, so it's contracting more, and with, contraction makes muscles less functional, less loose, less everything. It's that,
and we don't breathe normally.
And we don't breathe. Yes, absolutely. And that's, I think it's most evident in birthing, where, that's a whole different conversation, but
it is.
But relaxation in that sense of safety would make the body functions really well. So, it's how, other than the clinic, which is, set up for people who are at homes leading busy lives, doing things they can't afford the time, nor the money, or the effort, or the resources to find that environment, what would be the baby steps that they would take? Because that's essentially what would be really useful to
Yes.
understand.
There's a number of resources. One is an app called Menda, Menda. And you can find it online in the App Store on Menda Health. That was created by our pain psychologist, Dr. Aria,
All right.
and it goes through everything that we've talked about in extreme detail. It uses Richard Schwartz's internal family systems. It uses acceptance commitment therapy and a whole bunch of clinical tools to make sense out of the pain experience. There's a book that I'd recommend. I have a book called The Pain Antidote, which it's pretty good, but a more recent book is called The Way Out by Alan Gordon.
Yeah.
The Way Out by Alan Gordon. And he describes pretty much what I've described, which is he created a form of therapy called pain reprocessing therapy, and describes a study in that book of people who had 11 years of back pain, and after 6 weeks of this therapy, which is done outpatient, by the way, their pain was reduced by 80%, and it lasted over a year. And they actually showed changes in the brain as a result of the therapy. So PRT, or pain reprocessing therapy, they have a really robust website as well with a lot of information. They have a pain psychology center where people can access care virtually through therapists.
We're coming to the end of this.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I still have so many questions, but
Yes.
to end with a happy kind of a good,
Yes.
optimistic note, cases or like stories that even you, understanding everything that you've talked about, and I'm assuming there are, you are like, oh wow, this really works. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
any of those that comes to mind, of course, without putting a lot of info out, but or a personal
So,
story.
uh, to end on a positive note, I would say one of the key components for intervening with chronic pain is finding the joy,
Mm.
connecting with the positive affect, we call it, because so often pain has shrunk down the version of life that people have.
Mm.
Joseph Campbell, who was a famous philosopher in the last century, said, "Find the joy inside, and the joy will burn away the pain."
But
And I believe that.
that's
Yeah,
the ventral. That's the ventral, the power of
that's
the
it.
ventral.
It is it.
Yeah, I remembered one thing out of that panel, and I think you mentioned it, the groups, the power of groups in
Yes,
management. Can you do,
yes.
because I think you said that, group work when it comes to chronic pain have shown is amazing.
It is. I mean, we do both individual and group work at our center. The group is based on how many people are in treatment, but Menda that I described is done in groups. And there's a couple of things that happen in groups. One is I hear my story, but I don't have the personal, it's not my story, it's your story. And I'm sitting next to you. It's like, oh, and that's called identification. It diffuses the uh, conviction that I'm flawed and that I'm terrible and that I'm uniquely awful. And I hear 5 people in the group, and I had one patient said, "You had how many surgeries?" 30 surgeries. Wow, I only had 3. I thought I was bad off. Um, the other thing is, in a group, people do process whether they're speaking or they're hearing. So it's an opportunity to let work get done, that difficult work, and I hear in your words my experience, and it makes sense in a different way. And then the third thing is it's co-regulation. I mean,
Yeah.
group is about, I can see people, you know, we use a lot of kind of irreverent humor in the process as well. So because people are so dour and they take themselves so seriously, and to have 3 or 4 people or 5 people in a group who are having a guffaw over, you know, some absurd concept is really pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest takeaway I had with the conference in Oxford is the power of groups, and we do need each other to heal. One last thing. I know I keep saying that, but this is really the one last thing. Your favorite cue of safety in your daily life?
The breath. Yeah, and I combine, and our patients combine breath with action, and so you know this is a nurturing action, just sort of you know pressure on the sternum that is really, it just engages me in, oh right, I'm here. This is my body. This I am present, and it's kind of nice, you know. It's kind of nice.
And it's a natural thing that the body does when
Yeah.
we do it intuitively. So
Yes.
the
Yes. Yes.
body has an amazing ability if we just let it do its thing and give it more
Yeah.
safety.
Yes.
No, thank you so much for your time,
Oh, yeah, it's fun. Great interview.
I wish you the best. Hopefully, I would love to come to Malibu. Hopefully,
Yeah.
not as a client, but I would.
No, no, we'll get you on the
Awesome.
surfboard.
It sounds awesome. Thank you
Good.
very much for your time.
You're
And
welcome.
where do people find you? Best
Uh,
you.
the pointemalibu.com is the website for the treatment center, and I'm available there. And then I have drmelpohl.com as well. It's
Okay.
my website.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mel. Have a
You're
good day.
welcome. It's great talking to you.
Bye.
Bye.